Here we are. So we are up to leave meeting. I don't want to do that. No. Okay. We are down Hof Gimel Omid Aleph. And this is as often happens with Gemara. We move across discussing something. We move across to something else because there's a similarity. There's something, a word which appears that we need to know something about, and which often happens. You then move on to another subject. Look at this, very interesting. So now you remember we are talking about the lighting bonfires. Yeah, I said we're not in November, but we're lighting bonfires. Here we are. That's Chof Gimel Amud Aleph, about 12 lines down, lighting the bonfires. And they brought these big sticks. And the question is, what were these sticks? And if you remember, we saw Masim. Oh, that's nice. Look at the Mishnah, or if you've still got the Mishnah, I can read it to you. Chof Beis Amud Beis. You haven't got Chof Beis Amud Beis. David, good to see you. We're just on Chof Gimel Amud Aleph, and remember, it says they brought kulus ice, and that's why in our Gemara here it says Masin Masos Mevin kulus ice v'chulu, or chulu, which means etc. Because our Mishnah says they were these long wood from cedar trees. Do you remember there was a cedar tree? Now, it's interesting, the cedar tree, we normally thought combustible. We thought it, as Rashi mentioned on the Mishnah, klusois, aruchim, and we spoke about all these things, atzei shemen, konim, they're all marbim shalheves, Rashi mentioned on that Mishnah. So we thought wonderful cedar trees. There's a lot more to cedar trees than meets the eye. Let's have a look at our Gemara, please. Omar Rav Yehuda. Right. Omar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, and from Tosfos, it turns out that we do need to know exactly what erez is. Could be for financial matters. If somebody sells erez, what exactly do they mean? Interesting. Laurie, good to see you. We're just picking up where it says Rabbi Omar Rav Yehuda, looking into cedar trees that they used for the bonfire. Remember that, well, not the bonfire, they were waving these long sticks of cedar wood. Cedar wood is this word erez. Omar Rav Yehuda, daled mine arozim hein. There are 4 types of cedar. And I say that could, in those days, interesting, the Meforshim explained, we don't find that mentioned in Halacha, but in those days it sounds like that was the usage. Nowadays, when we say erez, we mean exactly that, a cedar tree. But as part of the family of arozim, when it's grouped with 4, Rabbi Yehuda, daled mine arozim. There are 4 types within this species, if you like. Erez, one of them is actually called erez. And then you've got kasrum, or kasroim. You've got 8 shemen and uverosh. We can do. We're back to the Gemara where it says shemen, uverosh, and kasroim. Have you got that?
Yeah.
So we mentioned before 4 types. That's erez, kasroim, 8 shemen of rosh. The Gemara first goes to number 2 because there's more to say on number 2. Kasroim. This word kasroim, Omar Rav says this is what they call adra. Okay. Omar Rav adra. Have a look at Rashi. Rashi says kach shem ha'ilon. It comes up in the Gemara Beitzah, Yite Behem Eider. Eider, if you want your property to do well, it's always good to have an Eider tree. Why an Eider? Again, it sounds like it's part of the cedar family. And if you have a tree like that, people will know, oh, you've got the property with the cedar in it. and therefore it would be well known that that's your property. So it's worth having a cedar. Also, it's very good for borders. If you want to board around a property, around land. That's the Gemara in Beitzah. So Rashi says, or based on our Gemara, Adra, that's the word, the translation of kasra, one of these four of the species of cedar trees. And I mentioned we do need to know that, as say, if somebody buys or sells errors, they need to know what could or could not be included. Nowadays, it's much simpler because we always talk about an error as being just as the standard cedar tree. Anyway, in those times, Omar Rav, it was Adra, Debei Rab Shila Omri. This is from the Debei, normally from a house, Debei, but it doesn't mean a house. It means the yeshiva of Rab Shila. The word actually is a mavliga, if you know what that is. It's the mavliga tree, obviously a name well known at the time of the Gemara. Interesting, Rashi here does not tell us what that is. But Omri lo zu gumish. There you are. If you ever come across a gumish tree, you know where it's a part of the eres. Certainly in those days, that was the word they used. Says the Gemara, Opliga de Rabba bar Rav Huna. This differs from the words of Rabba bar Rav Huna. Do Omer Rabba bar Huna. Got it. Beginning of the line is Huna. Omre Bei Rav. He said, coming from the yeshiva of Rav. What we've just explained, how many were there? There were four in this category. In the four species of trees which fit into the Erez. But coming now from this, from the house of Rav, Asara Mine Arozim. There are 10 different species that come under the category of Arozim. And we mentioned this pasuk talking about the future, Yeshaya Mem Aleph 41. Etain Bamidbar. Actually, some of these words appear in Deroi Cross. Some people may know one of the Zemiras called Deroi Cross from Sfardi. Etain Bamidbar, I will place in the wilderness. Erez, Shita, another word. Hadas, Eitz, Shemen. There we are. And then Osim Ba'arova, Beroish, Tithor, Usa'ashur, Yachtov. Okay. So there are 10, but we haven't actually got 10 in that posuk. In the midbar, I will place Erez, and these, according to the house of Rav, they're all parts of that family. And what do we have? We've got Erez, Shita, Hadas, Eit Shemen, and Osim Boarova, Beroish, Tita, Usa'ashur. The word Usa'ashur. It's not the word from the word Ashur, it's Sa'ashur and Ta'ashur Yachtov. Let's go through those. Erez is the Arza. That's the cedar tree that we know. Shita is, he mentions here, Tournisa. A word for you in French. Rashi's going to rather help you there. Interesting. It looks like the word pine to me in that Rashi. It's, yeah, got pine. You can see the word pine that Rashi's got there. Yeah, so it looks very much like the pine tree as part of that family. Next, back to our Gemara. Where are we up to? Shito is Turnisa. Hadas, and we know what Hadassim are. Interesting. The Hadassim are part of that tree. The Osso, yeah, the normal myrtle, the Hadassim. Eitz Shemen. What's the Eitz Shemen? A Farsama. Normal translated as balsam, coming from the same group, the same grouping. There's your Barosh, is Barto. Rashi gives you a word here, Busa. I think this they normally translate Atse Barosim, boxwood. People familiar with that? Coming from
there's
the same
a road
group.
there, Norman. There's a street in Rosh Pinal which says Rehov Barosh. Rehov Barosh.
Well, is it Barosh or Barosh?
Well, it's
probably haven't got the vowel. Do you have the vowels on the tree on the road, or you don't?
No, not on the street signs. No,
it's just got the name Beis Reish Vav Shin.
Yeah, Barosh.
Barosh. Oh, so yeah, it would be pronounced Barosh.
So it's not. It's not in the head. It's a type of.
No, absolutely.
Type of
no. That's exactly what we're saying here. I think translated as boxwood. Barosh, but I say coming up in Dorokra. Yeah, Barosh. But you're quite right. It's got nothing to do with the head. There's no aleph there. Barosh. So it's part of this the family. Thank you for that. And then we've got another one. What was the next one? That was so Barosh is what it tells you what it is. This Barossa, which Rashi translates for us. Those people who are familiar with Old French. Next, we've got Tidhor. Yeah, and of course that does come. I'm just thinking about in the Zemiris we actually use that word Tidhor. That's Shagor. And again, the word in French, I can't quite read it. Shinpei. Yeah, Balaz. I don't know what that is. Some people translate it. I think this is the fir tree. Yeah. But you've got old French words coming up here the whole time. And to Ashur is Shurivna. There you go. In case you're not quite sure what Shurivna are. Rashi doesn't actually even tell us what that word means. Okay, so we've got all these words with some old French next to it. Now we can understand why people spend a lot of time studying the Rashi and the big fuss about Rashi in Troy and in France, because it's based on this. And of course, Rashi going back 1,000 years, 900 years, and we've got an understanding. If you're into Old French, you can be studying the commentary here on not only Rosh Hashanah but other Masechtas too, and you'll get a better understanding of some of the Old French words. So that's why, of course, he's considered a great hero in many of these places. But of course, that's only for his the Old French. For us, of course, he's Pirush across so many things, whether it's Tanakh or Gemaras, other things too. We've got the Pirush of Rashi. So let's move on. So says the Gemara, this is all part of the group of Erez. Yeah, says the Gemara, but in that pasuk, Hani Shiva Havi. I thought we said at the beginning meant to be 10. This pasuk only reckons out 7. There were 7 names of different trees. Even a Hadass seems to be part of that group. Says the Gemara, Ki also Rabdimi. Rabdimi came. Remember, he was always going from Eretz Israel to Bovel. Omar, he added. Hosifu aleim. Yes, they added. It's true that pasuk only tells us that there are 7 in the and we're saying the explanation is that all 7 are part of the grouping, the species of cedar trees, but there are a few more. Hosifu aleim. There we are. What are the extra ones? Alonim, Almoinim, and Almoigim. Have you got a line at Almoigim? People just joining us. Almoinim, just over halfway down the page. We're looking at different things or different trees which fall under the category of cedar. So we've got those 3. What are they? Alonim, Almoinim, and Almoigim. What are alonim? Alonim are butmi. Rashi says butmi, doesn't really tell us much, but it just says almi. Looks a bit like the word elm tree. Elmi. I don't think that's Old French there. Almi. Yeah. That's butmi. Almoinim is beluti. Beluti, sirkava, an Old French word again. Shegedelim bo peri. Shekorin galianda. Are people familiar with that? No, I'm not. Although some people do call that the oak, I think. Oak tree. And the last one is almogim is kosiso. Min eitz ha'oile b'karka hayam. That's interesting. A type of tree which you see on the bed of the water, the rivers, the seas. Ushemoi coral. There you are. The coral tree, is that what you would call it? I suppose you would say the coral tree. I said you've got it on the bed, the karka of the yam. Also, that's part of the group of the Erez family. Okay, Ikade Amre, there are some who say those 3 extras that we need to make up the 10 in that grouping. What are they? Aronim, Armoinim, and Almoigim. So we've got an extra one there. We've got these, Aronim, Armonim, Almoigim. And what are these Aronim? What the Aronim are Ore. Look at Rashi. Lo, Shemo Iron. And he tells you that the fruit of the tree is this paish in Old French. Some people, loroi, I think it's meant to be like laurel. Yeah. Anybody got any French scholars here can tell us why you say laurel in French? Laurel, I don't know. Oh, we used to have I remember our French scholar coming to in the Shiur in America now. Tell us a little bit about that. Next, and so we've got there. Aronim was ore. Armonim. What are these armonim that we mentioned here? That's nothing to do with Dolby. Remember from the past, old Dolby. Here we are. This is called a Dolby. Rashi, again, another name. But look at that word. Castania. Castania in Rashi. Some of the chestnuts. That's from the word Dolby. And the last one, Almogim, is Kasisa. Yeah, so there's your Kasisa that we mentioned before, the min eights. Okay, so we've got these, we've now increased the numbers from 7 to 10, all part of the family of, as we said, from the family of the Erez, the grouping. Okay? So I say that would make differences financially. If you wrote you're having an Erez or buying, selling Arozim, you do need to specify which one because they could all be part of that grouping. Now, interesting, we spoke before, just a moment ago, about this Kisisa, yeah? Put me about all these different things. There's your Kisisa again, Almonim, we meant Almogim was the Kisisa, which was the coral. And again, what often happens, once you start mentioning, we're moving from, I wouldn't say tangent, but we've mentioned a topic and we move along slightly from there with that link. The Gemara continues, as we're talking here about coral, we'll get to that in a moment, says the Gemara, what about these coral we saw, remember, from under the sea and the value of them? Says the Gemara, and here's another posuk. Let's see, here we are. V'tzi adir, again from a posuk in Yeshaya. V'tzi adir Lo Ya'avrenu. I've got the whole posuk around the side. You probably have two. The end of the posuk says, V'tzi. What's this? Tzi adir lo Ya'avrenu. What's that? Have a look at Rashi, please. V'tzi adir lo Ya'avrenu. Then we'll see in a minute how this will link up to the word coral that we had before. Says Rashi, V'tzi adir lo Ya'avrenu lenachal. There'll be this nachal, so like a river. That Rashi says, She'osid lot seis mi beis hamikdash, or beis hakodesh hakadoshim. If you look at this posuk coming from Yeshaya, in Yerushalayim there will be the Tzi Adir Lo Ya'avrenu. There will be this river coming from Yerushalayim. And Tzi Adir, what's Adir? Adir who? Strong, powerful. This large, powerful sea, which actually means a boat, as Rashi, the Gemara will tell us in a minute, will not be able to cross over it. It will be a huge river. Have a look at the Gemara now. Omar Rab Zu Burni Gedoyla. What's a burni? A lot of vocabulary for us tonight. Burni Gedoyla Spina. Another old French word there. I don't know that word in French, but apparently it's a large boat. A large boat won't be able to cross over this river. Okay, here's this large boat. So what's this large boat? The large burni. Heichi Ovdi. What are these boats? What's special about this burni? The Tzi Adir, as we translated this burni Gedoyla. What's it used for? What's the point of it? Say the point. In which way is it used? Have a look at Rashi here. Heichi Avde. Oise burni Gedoyla. Lamai Avida. What's it used for? Okay, so we mentioned these large boats, and we'll see now how this will link up to what we learned before. Says the Gemara, Heichi Ovdi, Maisi Shis Alfe Gavre. We do often find these words, certain numbers are used just as, I wouldn't say a guzma, but sometimes they're used just to explain how difficult or the amount of work that was needed. The time will come, 6,000 people, Betresa Yache Shosa. You know, and Shosa, over 12 months. V'omrilo, some people say, Tresa Alfe Gavre, B'shisa Yarche Shosa. Some people say the other way around, that they will be Tresa Alfe Gavre, 12,000 people over 6 months. And what would they do? V'torne lo cholo ad deshavno. What does that mean? They would take from Toyain, they will carry, the ships will be laden, v'torne lo cholo. What's cholo? From chol. Chol is sand. Ad deshochno. Words here. Or you say the shavna. What does it mean the shavna? Until it would settle, drop down, huge amount, to filling up these boats with this sand, until it would rest. Wow. What was that for? The nochis bar amoroi. So this is there's a huge amount of sand on these boats. They're now resting, as Rashi says, chola is choil, ad de shochna, until these boats, I've got the shochna, some people have shochna is what we got in our Gemara, ad de shochna from the word shoichein, it would dwell, shuleha, its base, shoichnim bekakois hayom, it would drop down until you got to the bed of the sea. So it's obviously shallow waters. You're dropping down the boat. So in other words, you've got huge manpower putting the sand on the boat, this large boat, and then the boat would sink. It's shallow water, so it wouldn't be totally under the water. So the top part of the ship would be above the water, as Rashi says. Why? This is now the link to our previous Gemara. Remember the almoigim? This is the coral. Where they grow, bayom, ein hayom omoik kol kach, says Rashi. It's in shallow waters. Mm-hmm. And what you're trying to do is get this coral, right? So what would you do? You've got this manpower, you put the sand on the boat sunk. Still not totally though, you've still got the top of the boat is visible. Says the Gemara, V'nochis bar amoroi. What's a bar amoroi? Have a look at Rashi. First of all, the word nochis. People familiar with the word nochis? In Aramaic, it means to go down. Solik is to go up. Nochis, learning a lot of vocabulary here. Nochis is go down, but nochis bar amoroi. What's this bar amoroi? Have a look at Rashi. Do we need to come on? We can, Peter. Yeah, on mute. Yeah. Bar amoroi melumad loshut bin horos. Interesting word, amoroi here. We normally talk about lovon arami. There's nothing to do with that. Amoroi means someone who's really a top-class swimmer. He would dive down, loshut bin nahoros, to swim in these nahoros. He would, let's say, melumad, well-versed. Actually, that's really the word melumad from loy made, well-versed, you can see. But in other words, this experienced diver or swimmer. And what would he do? Back to our Gemara. Nochis, he would go down, v'kotar atune de kisno. Sorry, it's hard words here for you, but it's good for, let's say, increasing the vocab. V'kotar. People familiar with the word for kotar? Actually, kotar very linked to the word koshar. Koshartem means to bind or to tie. He would tie atuna de kisna. What's atuna? Rashi tells us, chavile pishton. A chever, like ropes made of flax. Shein koshin, linotek. Very hard to break. Yeah. So he would take these ropes, the kosher roishay echod, he would tie one end, but b'shoresh ha'ilon, at the root of the tree, the roishay echod b'burni. So he would dive down, tie the rope to the shoresh, the root of the coral, and the other end would be tied very carefully, very obviously, to ensure that it was very tightly tied to the boat. I'm beginning to line is Bar Amoroi, 3/4 of the way down, Chof Gimel Omid Aleph. Bar Amoroi, we're talking about how they managed to secure the coral, which we said before was part linked to the Erez family, right? V'kotar atune de kisna, this is ropes of flax. V'kasiso, we said Bekasiso, Rashi explained, was the shoresh. Yeah? Bekasiso, this was on the shoresh of the tree. And there's your word again, kasiso. Remember the word kasiso meaning coral. So Rashi is telling us that they tied to the rosh of the tree, of the coral tree. V'kotaluhu bisit, as Rashi's already told us, v'kotaluhu bisfinto, and the other end was tied to the boat, the ship itself. Okay, now, what do you remember? They've had a huge manpower to fill this boat with sand. Well, there's one boat, other boats. So remember, they'd filled it with sand, it had sunk or dropped down, the level of the boat had dropped. It's now at the bed of the sea, the Nahal. The diver had gone down, tied one end of the rope to the coral, the other end was securely fastened to the boat. What happens next? Says the Gemara, V'notle chola. What does it mean, notle? They would take, notal is to take, chola, the sand, the shodu livroi. You know the word shodi? Shodi in Aramaic means to throw. They would throw it overboard, livroi, bar, milgavu, milbar, on the outside. They would throw out the sand. Okay. V'kama de medallia okra umasya. But what's mean v'kama de medallia? Remember the word? There's a Rashi first of all. Although we've got the word v'shakla here. Obviously, you had the word shakla in the Gemara. We've got the notla chola, shakla, to take shakal. Hanach gavre, those people that with the manpower that they had, they would take chola, the sand, disfinta, which was in the boat, v'shodu la'avroi, they would throw it overboard. V'kama de medallia. What's kama? As it would, what's medallia? For the word Aramim Hashem Tidili Soni, always in Aramaic. You can look, try and find at least a connection to a Hebrew word, and that will be great help. So v'kama de medallia, as the boat, medallia, from Dal, as it starts now rising. Why is the boat rising? Because the sand has been thrown out. For Kama de Medallia, continue the Gemara, Okra umosya. Oiker and masya is from also to bring or give, bring. Have a look at Rashi again. Vehi oila, the boat would rise, mitoch hamayim, from the water, v'okeres, that's his word okra in the Gemara, shorashei ha'ilon, the roots of the coral tree, umasya. What do you mean umasya? In that way they could bring the coral from the depths. They would bring it up. And this was extremely valuable. So again, linking up to this Erez. So we all linked to the Erez we spoke about in the Mishnah. The Erez tree, very valuable indeed. In particular, this Erez, which is the coral, which is part of the family. Umachalif, what's machalif mean? You could swap, you could change. Yeah, chalipin. Umachlif al-chad terrain b'kaspo. Kaspo normally is silver, kesef azov. You could exchange chad al-chad for one, presumably the same measure, this measure of coral for train b'kaspo, 2 of silver. Extremely valuable. And okay, continues the Gemara. Talas parvosa havien. It's a good word. What's the word parvosa? Not familiar to me, but Rashi helps us. And can we make out something from that French word that Rashi's got? Yeah, port. There's the word port. Not talking about a drink. We're talking about a port. Yeah, there were 3 ports, as Rashi says. Ubalosh Mishnah Nomol. Yeah, we know the word Nomol. Yeah, port. There were 3 ports. Tlosa Paravosa Havien. Tarte Be Armoi. Now, this really does mean Armoi. I've got a slight change here. A change. I don't know whether you've got. In my Gemara, I've got to change to Roimoi. Not Aramoi, because we had the word Aramoi before. Remember, that was the person who was the diver. So this one really is either should be Romoi. Yeah. So there were 2 ports, seems to be in Rome. And one back to Persia, coming to the Megillah Esther, and one in Parasoi. And what was special about them? The Be'armoi. So says the Gemara, the Chadar de Parasoi. The Be'armoi, this one, which was in, well, actually there wasn't one, there were 2, remember, in the area of the Armoi or Romoi, Maskon Kasisa. Telling about some ports. There were ports where there were 2 places where again they would bring up Maskon, bring up Kosisa, this coral, and the Vei Parasoi, this port in Parasoi, Persia, Maskon Marganisa. They would bring Marganisa, diamonds, normally actually pearls. Have a look at Rashi. Maskon Marganisa, Mikakois Hayom, Al Yedei Bar Amoroi. Remember, the Bar Amoroi was this diver. The diver would tie the ends of the rope to the base, but in this time, what would he do? These diving to bring up the pearls. Interesting. Umakaria, it was called, this port, Parvosa, a port, Damash. I've got Damashmahig. Have a look at Rashi. Umakaria Parvosa Damashmahig. Oysa shel Pasoim. That port of the Persians, Nikras Nomol shel Melucha. So this word mashmehig looks like a manhig, the lotion of Melucha.
Norman, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
But before we were talking about casita, which is the coral wood, and why are we now talking about coral? do they burn the coral? Is it part of the bath?
No. There are two things. Once we, again, linking one to the other, we are talking about coral. Yeah? Coral being of the family of Erez. The Gemara then goes on to explain, how do you get this coral? You get this coral by this process, remember, with the boats. The boats laden and then pulling up the roots for coral. As we mentioned, there were two ports. We talk about these ports where you could actually, it looks like, where you had the coral. Then it mentions, we're talking about these ports, one port, nothing to do, you're quite right, nothing to do with coral, but it's another port where they used to, or nearby, they would have the divers going down, bringing up the pearls. So it's a lot of links going on here, from, I say, our Erez to the family of Arozim, onto coral. Once we talk about corals and this method and having divers jumping off boats and then coming up with these pearls in this second case, or the other occasion was going down and tying to the coral. Now we've seen pictures of these divers going down and bringing up pearls. We may have seen it, but that's so there's a linkage going on here. But the main point is we can see the value of coral. We can also see that it's linked to this Erez, part of the family of our Rosin, and that's what we're talking about here when we particularly talk about the cedar tree. That's like the head of this group, and we're using cedar trees in so many different ways, and part of the family linking up to coral too. Okay?
Can I just say this is extremely unecological? I mean, we are trying to preserve the corals, and for these divers to be going down and wrecking them and putting up stuff, it's just a comment. I can't.
No, that's a fine comment, but nobody said they were doing this worldwide, and nobody ever said they're doing it everywhere. But they're bringing up a bit of coral. I don't know if you've had got anything coral in the house.
Like in Eilat, they've coralled it off because it's getting destroyed, and it's a wonderful source of animal life.
Oh, absolutely! It needs to be controlled, but there's nothing wrong with bringing up coral as long as you're not destroying all the coral.
The reef. Well,
you don't install the whole thing, but bringing up coral.
It seems a very blunt process. Anyway, it's just a comment.
No, I understand. A comment yet taken, but I think everything controlled. As we say, going down to the depths, bringing up. As we see throughout, nobody's suggesting we're destroying all the coral reef, in its entirety. But this would be the method if you were. No doubt there were rules of controlling it, but the way to do it would be, I say, through this method of bringing up. Certainly in those days, of bringing up the coral. But the point we're making here, and you can see the value of the coral. Yes, a point taken, you need to control it, but you can see the value of the coral, and that's all comes under the category of arozim, cedar tree, which say Eretz is well known for the arozim, and that's what we're saying here. These are very valuable trees and a very valuable family of trees all coming from this group. But yeah, that's the way they will get the crop. So again, the Gemara is explaining the value and the lengths they will go to get the coral. Again, yes, there would be hopefully there'll be some rules in force to ensure that they weren't totally removing all the coral. But the idea is that, yes, it's valuable, and that's part of the Arozim family. Yeah? Continues the Gemara, as we're still talking about coral, just to conclude the piece. Amar Rab Yochanan, Kol Shita b'Shita. Remember? What was the Shita Rashi told us before? Wasn't that the pine? When we had the word Shita before? Remember, that was Turnisa. Was part of the family, Shita as well. is a part of the Gemara says Turnisa, and Rashi tells us it's the pine. The pine, all these pine. That they were taken from Yerushalayim itself. What we're saying is valuable, these trees, even the trees, Osid HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lachaziron Lo. Whatever was taken, they will be returned. Yeah? Restoration of all of these things. Shenemar, here's the pasuk we mentioned at the beginning. Etein bamidbar eretz shita. That's the pasuk we brought right at the beginning. I would, make in the wilderness. Remember, bamidbar eretz shita. It says Etein bamidbar. What do you mean bamidbar? It's a remez, a hint. Ve'ein midbar elo Yerushalayim. It's actually referring to Yerushalayim itself. Shenema Tzion midbar hoyoso. Wow. Tzion has become, remember, a midbar. Yes, I know we're building up Yerushalayim. We're talking about the actual area of the Beis Hamikdash. It's a midbar. And the reference there, says the Gemara, Etein bamidbar, I will bring back everything they will all be restored. Interesting, on that pasuk, which I've got in front of me from chapter 60, pasuk 17, Tachar of Yizov, as we go, Etein bamidbar tziyam. Yeah, on the same topic, it's as as we follow this through, actually the final comment. In other words, you'll see from the Radak and others explain that ultimately, when the time comes, there will be restoration of all the things that have been taken from Klal Yisrael. And I'm looking at the Radak in one of the psukim there that says. Etein belibom l'shalem l'cho kiflayim v'kiflei kiflayim me'asher lokchu mimcha heim ba'aviseim. Radak in Yeshaya, Samach will mention that pasuk in a moment. In other words, they will feel that they want to give back everything they've taken, and kiflei kiflayim, trying to make amends over all the years of the booty that they've taken from Klal Yisrael. We'll follow that up in a moment, but first of all, there's another statement. So we've just learned about the restoration. Omer Rabbi Yochanan, another statement about these group of the arozim, the cedar trees. Remember, there was another group or another tree, and that was the hadas. Hadassim, although they don't really look quite the same in height as the real areas that we know, but nevertheless, it's all part of that family. As we mentioned, Hadassim, Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Kol haloimed Torah ve'eino melamdo. Someone's learning ve'eino melamdo, but doesn't pass that knowledge on. Doimer lahadas b'midbar. Again, using that pasuk that we saw before. Etein b'midbar. Remember, it says also hadas. Here we're taking the word midbar literally, and we're saying, I will place a hadas in the midbar. What's this hadas in the midbar? Someone, a hadas, this is negative. Someone who has Torah but doesn't pass it on. It's like planting this beautiful hadassim in the midbar. Nobody can gaze, nobody can enjoy it. Obviously, this is a negative comment, warning people that's not what you should do. Someone who has skills should try and pass those skills on. Someone who has the knowledge should try and pass that knowledge on. Yeah. Iked the Amrei, there are some people who learn this pasuk very positively. Kol haloimei Torah u'melamdo b'mokum she'ein talmidei chachomim. If someone's going out and teaching Torah in a place where there are no talmidei chachomim, like a midbar, doime lahadas b'midbar. It's just the start. It's not the end. He's planting a hadas. And remember, we've got the hadas with the three, we always look for, remember the three leaves coming out, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, if you're planting a hadas in a midbar, but it doesn't mean it's stopping there, you hope that, and presumably nurturing those, the myrtles, that you're going to end up with a growth of a huge number of myrtles and hadassim. This is taken very positively. In a place where there are no Talmidei Chachomim and you plant this hadas, then doime lahadas b'midbar. And I've got the word here, dochoviv. I've got the word dochoviv here. That is beloved, it's liked. That's really what it's all about. So in other words, it's taken in two ways. Planting something where no growth is like just planting this hadas in the midbar, assuming it will not grow and there won't be further growth of other trees, other hadassim. It's not being utilized properly. But some people learn this in the positive way. Planting a hadas in a place where there is a midbar at the moment is extremely valuable, causing further growth in that area and something we should be looking towards. So people who have particular skills should be trying to pass them on, but particularly in the area of Torah, if knowledge, passing that on to others. And now we come back to the final statement. What do you mean, Elohem takona? There's no real takona remedy. Shenema. Back to another pasuk in Yeshaya. Tachas hanachoshes ovi zohov. Any nachoshes which was taken, ovi zohov, I will bring gold. In fact, it's on that pasuk. I've got the redak here, where it says the umas ha'olam. Eventually, the time will come, they'll feel that they want to make, restore financial, any assets that have been taken, restoring them, not just, kiflayim. The Apostle says, Tachas hanachoshes ovizov, but Tachas habarzel, where there's, instead of taking, where iron was taking, ovi kesef. The Tachas, again, we got here, V'tachas or eitzim, the word mem is missing. Is it? You've got a note there. Tachas or eitzim nochoshes. V'sachas huavonim barzel. Oh, so hold on. Yes, let's read the pasuk again. Have you got the whole pasuk around the side? You probably do. Tachas hanachoshes ovi zohov. V'sachas habarzel avi kesef. V'sachas or eitzim nochoshes. So in other words, there will be restoration of all the loot that is taken from Klal Yisrael, and it will be restored kiflayim. And I say from the Radak, you can see there the shelok chumimcha etein belibon. Eventually, they will feel that they're coming, and they want to try and make good all the losses of Klal Yisrael. However, the Gemara finishes up and says the following. What about Tachas Rabbi Akiva v'chaveirov? Rabbi Akiva and his, when you say friends, well, they went through the cruelty of the killings that took place of Klal Yisrael throughout the ages, but epitomized by Rabbi Akiva v'chaveirov. Says the Gemara, "Ma'im aviyim." What can you bring for them? You can make up financial losses. Sadly, not to the people from whom it was taken, but that can be made up. But what are you going to bring for the losses and the cruelty that happened to all those individuals over all the years? Nothing. It's like a rhetorical question. About them, the Pasuk says, Vinikesi, oh yes, I can clean them. In other words, they can make good other Averas. And interesting, there's a comma there. Vinikesi, domom loinikesi. But from the blood that has been taken, that can't be cleansed. Have a look at Rashi. Vinikesi, domom loinikesi. Imposi lenakos es ha'akum. To cleanse. If I'm coming to cleanse the Umas Ha'olam. Mishar Avonis. From all their Averis, even the theft that they've taken over all the years, yes, that can be repaid, and it can be repaid kiflayim. Says the Gemara, says the last line of the Rashi here. Lo, I've got lo enokem or lo in anakeh. That mem may actually be a hey at the end. I've got in the Hagor Sabach, which you've got on the side as well. I cannot cleanse them midomom shel Yisrael. That cannot be cleansed, and of course the unshim for that will be in the Olam Emes. But that very powerful loshon used here. Interesting. Those people, although normally look in Sefaria to get the Marshah, I noticed this one wasn't there. Those people actually have a Gemara. I want to mention that because it does link up to the Megillas Esther, where it talks about Abul Domom Shu Dam Rabbi Akiva Vachaverov Lo Nikesi De'i Efshar She'anake Eschem Al Yidei She'teporu Dovor Choshuv. Wow, the loss of the Mashah. You can't pay for the lives over all the millennia that for Klal Yisrael that they've lost. Gam hishmo tachas nafshom. You say ve'ein nefesh. The lashon of the Marshal finishes ve'ein nefesh hatzor shoive benezek. Remember, that's the lashon that Esther uses in the Megillah when she says ein hatzor shoive benezek hamelech. When she's saying to Achashverosh what Haman's planned to do to remove Klal Yisrael. What is the king going to gain out of that? And the uses of that word here in the Marshah exactly the same. You can never make up for the loss of Rabbi Akiva and Chaverov. That lot, I say, the wording of the Marshah here, which links up, as I say, to Megillas Esther. And of course, the beautiful, the lashon of the Megillas Esther, we'll close with that lashon of Megillas Esther. Of course, it's the nace that happened in Chutz La'aretz, and it really is, in many ways, a highlight of the whole year. And it's true, you'd say we've got other Yomim Tovim. Of course, we do have Rosh Hashanah. If you talk about their Pesach and Shavuot, Sukkot, and what they represent, the Rosh Hashanah, etc. But it's going from the beginning, the birth of Klal Yisrael, which again, another month we're onto another cycle, starting with Nisan, and with this birth of Klal Yisrael, with the Kabbalah Satorah, and everything that goes with becoming this people, ultimately leading to, yes, we've gone into Golus, sadly, and even in the time of Esther, which was not in Eretz Israel, nevertheless, we constantly find this idea of Ehyeh, I'll be with you, Hashem says, Imo anoichi v'tzara, I'm with you on your times of distress, and the nisim that happened in Chutz La'aretz. See, in other words, even in time, what's called Hester. Hester means hidden. In hidden times, we can still appreciate, of course, in Golus, and we're looking to go from Golus back to Eretz Yisrael, Zman HaMashiach, etc., and even earlier. But the point is, the becoming a people and recognizing the Yad Hashem, that Hashem is constantly with us, even in Golus, is in many ways the ultimate. Not just in a time of Golus where it's clearly visible, but even in hidden times, looking for. And I think that's the example they make. Someone in hiding. Remember the example I did hear that just recently, actually. Someone in hiding. Imagine asking one of the kids where you're busy with something. You say, "Yeah, let's play hide and seek. Go and hide," and then the kid goes off to hide, and you start doing whatever you want to do. And the kid comes back after after a long while, saying, "No," he's crying. He said, "You're not looking for me." So yeah, this play hide and seek. The kid goes in
play hide and seek.
To play hide and seek, and then he comes back after a while crying and saying, "What's the matter?" says Grandpa. And he said, "You're not looking for me." And a simple marshal, but the marshal is, even in this time of hiding, yes, this is, I say, we are in Golus, but it's up to us to go searching and looking and finding that we see the Yad Hashem. Hashem is with us. And that's the idea, the lessons we're taking from Purim. It's an incredible time for tefillos and a mesugel dikas man for tefillos. And therefore, please, we shouldn't lose that opportunity when it comes to Purim. In many places, going back 1,000 years, I'm not talking about Tanis Esther, I'm talking about Purim itself, was a day where there was, normally talking about there's no tachanun, there certainly was tachanun and all bakoshus and tefillos. Oh yes, it's a time for partying as well, but it was also coupled with lots of prayer and tefillah and bakoshus, because if we can see, and that's the point, we see the nisim that happened in the time of Esther, in a time of Golus, then it's a time we should be praying and mispal for further nisim, leading ultimately to the Geula Shalema, and that's why it is a very, very auspicious time, a time for prayers, tefillos, in every area, personal, public, communal, so we don't want to lose that opportunity, and Emir Hashem go from strength to strength. So yeah, at the same time, yes, a time for Adelo Yoda, drinking a little bit. It does say Adelo more than usual, I think is the way it's placed. Explained. So yes, everybody should have a very good Purim, an enjoyable Purim. So we will not be meeting next Wednesday night, but say have a wonderful, wonderful Purim and uplifting Purim in many the spirits in all ways. But yes, and we look forward in Emir Hashem to further nisim, good news all round. To our brethren, if there was a time, although we're hearing good news that's coming through, that let's hope the good news continues. And I say we should only, go from strength to strength. Meanwhile, everybody have a very good Purim, and we look forward.